G'day brewers, Hendo here from the Rockstar Brewer Academy. In this video, I'm going to show you how to use Beer 30 to repitch yeast from one cone to another. So it's cone-to-cone repitching. Let's take a look. So here I am in the Beer 30 dashboard, and what I've got here is I've got a batch of brown sugar ale sitting in FV11, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to harvest some yeast from that tank, and I am going to pitch it over here into FV82, where I'm currently brewing a batch of Malaysian IPA. So the first thing you've got to do is basically jump into the yeast module, and you'll see that there's a number of different things you can do. So firstly, it tells you what inventory you're currently sitting on. And currently I'm sitting on a little bit in my Yeastbrink 01. But we're not using Yeastbrinks today. What we're going to be doing is a direct cone-to-cone repitch. So if I click on the Actions tab here, the first thing I need to do is I need to harvest the yeast. Now, it's really important that you do this before you do your knockout, because when you go to close out your knockout, it's going to ask if you're pitching yeast in. All right, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to harvest yeast here. And what I'm going to do here is I am going to pick FV11, my brown sugar ale. And it's basically telling me all of the different pitches that are currently in this tank. Normally you'd only see one, but this is a bit of a demo instance and it gets a little bit messed up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically take 1 barrel of yeast out of this particular tank. Now, it's asking me for my generation number. So the reason that Beer 30 doesn't automatically generate generation numbers is so that it can keep you, the brewer, in control of the generation numbers. But if I have a look here, I can see that this particular generation is generation 3, generation 5. So I'm just going to assume the latest one here, and I'm going to call this generation 6. Now, next thing it's going to do is saying select empty yeast brink or new vessel. Now, because I'm doing a cone-to-cone repitch, I'm actually going to be transferring that to a new vessel. So I'm just going to select new vessel. I can put in some quality data here about the cell count and viability and all that sort of thing, but I'm just going to skip that for now. And what's going to happen is I'll hit harvest yeast. And now what happens in my inventory is you can see that I now have my pitch of WLP 001 yeast, generation 6, which is sitting in like an imaginary between yeast brink sort of thing. Okay, go with me here. You'll see what happens in a minute. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go into my brew. So as you can see here, I've got my batch of Malaysian IPA. I've got all my boil and kettle additions in, and I'm ready to knock out. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I go to the knockout tab and I'll select my batch of Malaysian IPA that's currently being brewed. I'm just going to put now as the time. I'll hit save knockout, and that kicks off the knockout. It's already telling me that the recipe is calling for WLP 001 yeast. I'm now on the complete knockout tab. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to select now. I'm going to put in everything on target. So 5.2, and I'm going to knock out. This is a 35 barrel recipe. So I'm going to have 36 barrels. Now here, when you're closing off a knockout, it's saying, are you adding yeast to this subset? Yes, I am, because I've already harvested it. So I'd click yes. And what it's going to say is select the WLP 001 that you've got from the inventory. Now, as you can see, here is the new vessel, which was harvested on today's date. And there's 1 barrel here, and it's telling me everything about that. It's telling me where that yeast came from and the batch number where that came from. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pitch that entire 1 barrel. Okay, because this is basically a cone-to-cone repitch. Now, if you were doing an inline cone-to-cone repitch, typically what would happen is on your brew day, you'd probably have a flow meter running between the 2 cones. You would do all of your yeast calculations beforehand, and you would take some notes as to the amount of yeast that you would be harvesting and therefore repitching. But you can do the yeast management in the yeast module prior to your knockout at any time during the brew day. It's really simple. So there's my 1 barrel of yeast, and my transferring worked to propagate yeast, not on this occasion. And then all I do is I hit save knockout, and that is my batch done. So if I go back into the dashboard, you'll see over in FV82, I've got 37 barrels. That's my 36 barrels from knockout. And also the 1 barrel of yeast that I have pitched in. You'll also notice as well that FV11 has had 1 barrel of volume deducted from it. Because we've taken yeast out, that no longer exists in this tank. It exists over, not in FV11, it exists in FV80. And that yeast is all pitched and ready to go. Now, lastly, what we can do is we can go back into the yeast module and we can check the genealogy to see that it's gone from batch to batch. So if I go and find my Malaysian IPA, and I've got this batch number here, and I'll just filter this, you can see the entire genealogy tree of this pitch of WLP 001, right from when it started, all the different tanks that it's gone into. And as you can see, if I zoom in down here and drag this up a bit, you can see that my Malaysian IPA, batch 220929, which is currently sitting in FV82, came from Brown Sugar IBSA batch 13, which is the one that's in FV11. So that's how you do cone-to-cone yeast repitching in Beer 30. As you can see, the yeast genealogy tree functionality is really powerful and really helps you get on top of making sure that you have full traceability in your yeast genealogy in your brewery. And also, cone-to-cone repitching is super simple. It literally takes a couple of minutes. If you want to know more about how Beer 30 can help you manage your yeast better in your brewery so you can brew better beer, leave a comment in the comment section below and one of the Beer 30 crew will reach out and they'd love to arrange a demo with you. Thanks heaps for watching this Tech Tip Tuesday. I'll catch you in the next video. Cheers.